that are recruiting teenagers to go and fight in a war. And this also represents a liability to the troops that are over there. If you have an apathetic soldier or an unwilling soldier, that's a liability to the entire operation over there in Iraq. So we're dealing with what's happening in Iraq, in Afghanistan, what's happening to the veterans afterward, and his comment that that the numbers are looking good and that's being admonished. Again, we're going back to the GAO study that found that the data that they examined likely underestimates the true number of recruiter irregularities. And they further found that the Department of Defense has no oversight framework that requires branches of the military to maintain and report on recruiter abuses, nor is there a common criteria for categorizing abuses or establishing shared terminology, so abuses can be terminized as recruiter error in the Army or malpractice in the Navy, making it difficult to both assign responsibility for and to quantify abuse. Representative Green made the comment earlier that we have an all-volunteer force. This instance and all the other instances that we're seeing throughout the country call into question that very basic assumption. We don't know how many have listened to what the recruiter said who requested separation from the delayed enlistment program and are now serving in Iraq, have died in Iraq, or are injured or emotionally scarred. And it's not acceptable for this to happen to one person, and I don't see any clear oversight framework that shows that the Department of Defense is dealing with this or that the individual military branches are dealing with this, because everything is being kept secret. There's no transparency, and that's why we need Congress to get involved, because this also links to taxpayer dollars, and one of the powers invested in Congress and responsibility is to maintain the military.
The ACLU came out with a report in May. It says that the United States has failed to uphold its commitments to safeguard the rights of youth under 18 from military recruitment. And the report goes on to say the military regularly targets youth under 18 for recruitment and disproportionately targets poor and minority students. Maureen Haver, in Houston, with the work that you've been doing, who is being targeted? Where are the recruiters? And I do want to ask both you and Douglas Smith how you feel about videotapes in the recruiting stations of all stations.
Well, in Houston, Aldine High School, for example, is in the northern part of Houston, and 70% of the students who attend Aldine High School are eligible for free or reduced price lunch. 71% of the student population is Hispanic. So if we're looking at the ACLU study that you just referenced, Aldine High School seems to fit that profile. Another reason why Congress needs to get involved is this also links to the No Child Left Behind Act, which was passed in 2001, and which will withhold federal funding from school districts who don't allow military recruiters access. And at one point, Irving mentioned that the recruiters, after he told them that he didn't want to go, they came into his classroom and harassed him in his classroom. This is a clear violation of students' rights to privacy, right to be left alone, and it has to stop.
Wait, explain that last point. They came into the classroom?
Irving, why don't...
Irving Gonzalez. What class were you in, and who came in?
They were already waiting for me in class. It was theater. I think it was theater arts, and they were already in the class, and I was going into the class, and as soon as I walked in, I was like, they're gonna mess with me. So I was kind of like, let me just sit down and, you know, mind my business. Hopefully they don't talk to me. So I started talking to my friend, and we were both talking, and they were like on the other side of the room. And in the classroom, the chairs aren't aligned like right next to each other. They go around the class like a circle. So whenever she was like, Private Gonzalez, and I looked at her, everybody was just like shocked, and they looked at me, and then they looked back at her, and she gave me a signal like to go over there towards her, you know, that she wanted to talk to me. And I didn't get up. And when I didn't get up, they like came to my chair and they got in my face and they're like, can I see you outside? And at this point, everybody in the classroom's kind of like shocked, like, what's going on? You know, why are they doing this? And I was like, no, I'm in class. I'm not going to leave my class. So they asked my teacher, can I talk to Irving outside privately? And they're like, oh yeah, you could take him outside. So they took me outside, and outside she was just like why don't you want to go? And no, you need to go and all this. And I was like, well, no, I'm not going to go. You know, that's, I feel that I could do better here. And she's like, no, you can't. College is hard. And she was just trying to relate to me, but at the same time trying to scare me into saying.
This is Congressman Gene Green. Does this sound irregular to you, that Irving Gonzalez is in his high school class and he is being recruited in the classroom?
Well, for one thing, you know, in Texas we have laws that when you're in a given class, whether it's theater, art, or science, or math, you're supposed to be in that class. There are exceptions, and I know the federal law encourages, as much as it can, recruiters having access to schools. But there's also a level of that. Sure, I want them to recruit in high school to give young people the opportunity, but I also don't want them to go to take them out of class and harass them to the point where saying, you know, you have to go when you sign a non-binding contract. If that contract is non-binding, that's what it means. And you really shouldn't be taken out of your class, whether it's theater arts or any other class, that to do that. They ought to visit them if they have to at home, or get them to come into a recruiting station. But again, if you're unwilling to go, there's only a certain level of encouragement that you should have to go through from the recruiter. And that's where we need to find out, where is this happening in the chain of command? If it's not just at, thank goodness it's not just at the Greenspoint Station, because that's in our district. But I want to know, why is that happening?
Douglas Smith, does this sound irregular to you, that the recruiters are in the classroom calling the students out?
Well, what the recruiters do in the school is subject to the regulations and guidelines that the schools establish. We want to be good guests in the high schools, but that varies from location to location. All I can tell you is that we expect our recruiters to abide by the regulations established by the schools they're working with.
I want to end with our two student guests, high school students who have said no to the military. Eric Martinez, what are your plans now, and what do you have to say to other young people? Do you know other young people in your situation?
Well, I already had a few friends that did sign up for the DEP and they already left, but that's because they wanted to. And all I really have to say to them other people is just, you don't have to go if you don't want to. Just stay informed about what you can do and what are the ways of getting out.
And Irving?
Well, in my school, I feel that there's more than just the recruiters asking for kids' information, but they're harassing them in lunch and their classes and putting them on the spots in the hallways, just trying to find a way to get to them and for them to actually start talking to them more. And a lot of families around my area, around the Aldine area, they're not informed about this. A lot of parents don't know about this information. So they're kind of lost in the whole procedure of the military, and we want to inform as many people as we can that if you want to go, okay, that's all good, but if you decide that there might be something else you could do, that there is something else, that there is that opportunity for you to get out.
I want to thank you all for being with us. Irving Gonzalez and Eric Martinez from Aldine High School. Maureen Haver, founder of NotEvenOne.org. Democratic Congressmember Gene Green, who's calling for an investigation into recruiting practices, and Douglas Smith, Public Affairs Officer for the U.S. Army Recruiting Command in Louisville, Kentucky. That does it for today's broadcast. If you'd like a copy of the show, go to democracynow.org. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, with producer Aramatay Angeli Comet. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.